Welcome, dear viewers, to an extraordinary tale that will challenge everything you think you know about detection and deduction. Today, we delve into one of Sherlock Holmes's most brilliant cases, where a single metallic sound, lasting no more than a heartbeat, became the key to unraveling an entire web of murder, conspiracy, and corruption. Have you ever wondered how the smallest details can hold the greatest truths? How a sound so brief it could be mistaken for coincidence might actually be the signature of a master criminal? Subscribe now, because this investigation will take us through the darkest corners of Victorian London, where nothing is as it seems, and justice hangs by the thinnest of threads. The autumn rain drummed against the tall windows of 221B Baker Street, but it was a different sound entirely that pierced through the monotony, a single sharp metallic ping echoing from the courtyard below. Holmes raised his head from his chemical apparatus, his gray eyes suddenly alert. The sound lasted no more than a second, yet something in its pitch, its resonance, stirred an immediate recognition in his trained ear. Dr. Watson barely noticed, absorbed in his morning paper, but Holmes was already at the window, studying the empty courtyard with the intensity of a hawk. This is not merely a story of observation. It is a masterclass in auditory detection, where the trained ear becomes more valuable than the sharpest eye. In the next hour, you will witness how Holmes transforms a fleeting sound into irrefutable evidence, how he navigates the treacherous waters of high society corruption, and how one man's courage to speak truth becomes another's death sentence. What makes this case truly extraordinary is not just the brilliance of Holmes's deduction, but the methodical precision of a killer who believed their signature sound was untraceable. You will discover how advanced Victorian technology became both weapon and evidence, how financial corruption reached the highest levels of society, and how the pursuit of justice sometimes demands the ultimate sacrifice. Prepare yourself for locked rooms with impossible exits, testimonies that shift like London fog, and a climax where the very sound that announced death becomes the instrument of justice. This is the case where Sherlock Holmes proved that in a world full of noise, only those who truly listen can hear the truth. Stay with us until the very end. You will not believe how this seemingly impossible mystery resolves, and the final revelation will leave you questioning every sound you hear. Within the hour, their sitting room received an unexpected visitor whose very presence seemed to disturb the morning's tranquility. Lady Catherine Pembroke arrived in evident distress, her elegant gloves trembling as she clutched a crumpled telegram against her chest. Her movements were precise yet nervous, the way only those born to high society could maintain composure while internally fracturing. Holmes observed her with his characteristic intensity, noting the slight tremor in her left hand, the way she unconsciously adjusted her pearl brooch every few seconds, and most tellingly, the faint red mark around her ring finger where she had been twisting her wedding band. Watson, ever the gentleman, immediately offered tea and a chair by the fire, but Lady Catherine remained standing, as if sitting would somehow make her terrible news more real. "Mr. Holmes," she began, her voice carrying the refined accent of upper-class education tinged with barely controlled panic. "My husband, Sir Edmund Pembroke, has vanished from our locked study 3 nights prior. I know how this must sound, but I assure you, the circumstances are beyond any rational explanation." Holmes leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Please, Lady Catherine, begin from the beginning. Omit no detail, however trivial it may seem." She took a shaking breath. Edmund had been working late in his study, as was his custom. The room has only one entrance, a heavy oak door that he always locked from the inside when conducting business. The windows faced the courtyard and had been sealed shut for winter. At precisely 11:47 p.m., according to multiple witnesses, there came a sharp metallic sound from the direction of his study. "Multiple witnesses?" Watson interjected. "Our butler, Mr. Garrison, was securing the house for the night. Mrs. Henley, our cook, was finishing her duties in the kitchen below. Even young Tommy, the stable boy, heard it from the courtyard. All described the same sound, a brief, sharp, metallic ping, unlike anything from our household." Holmes's eyes sharpened. "And Sir Edmund?" "Gone." The word fell like a stone into still water. When Mr. Garrison unlocked the study door the following morning, using his master key as Edmund failed to appear for breakfast, the room was empty. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, nothing disturbed except— She paused, pressing her handkerchief to her lips. "Except what, Lady Catherine?" The clock on his desk had stopped at exactly 11:47 p.m. The same moment the sound was heard, Holmes rose and began pacing, his mind already working through the impossibilities. The windows, you said they were sealed? From the inside, yes. Edmund was particular about drafts. The window latches were still secured when we found the room empty. Watson looked up from his notes. Could he have left through the door after the sound was heard? Lady Catherine shook her head emphatically. Mr. Garrison remained in the corridor until well past midnight, organizing the morning's duties. No one passed him, and the door remained locked from within until he opened it the next day. Holmes stopped pacing. Tell me about this metallic sound in greater detail. Was it sharp like a gunshot? Resonant like a bell? Brief like a snap? It was, she searched for words, like a spring under tension suddenly releasing. Very brief, very sharp, with an almost musical quality to the pitch. Mrs. Henley said it reminded her of the sound when she winds her grandmother's music box too tightly. Fascinating. Holmes turned to face her fully. Lady Catherine, there is something you have not yet shared. Your husband's disappearance. Was it entirely unexpected? For the first time, her composure cracked completely. Edmund had been receiving threats, Mr. Holmes. Anonymous letters, strange visitors who would not give their names. He was due to testify in Parliament next week regarding irregularities he had discovered in several major banking institutions. He believed certain parties would go to great lengths to prevent his testimony. Holmes exchanged a meaningful look with Watson. Do you still have these threatening letters? That is the most disturbing part, Mr. Holmes. When we searched his study after his disappearance, all his correspondence had vanished. His financial documents, his prepared testimony, even his personal diary, all gone. Yet his valuable pocket watch, his gold pen set, and a considerable sum of money remained untouched. This was not a robbery, Holmes concluded grimly. No, Mr. Holmes, this was something far more sinister. And now, 3 days later, I received this. She handed him the telegram she had been clutching. It arrived this morning, addressed to Edmund. Holmes unfolded the yellow paper and read aloud. The sound of truth dies with the voice that speaks it. Silence is golden. Wednesday approaches. Watson looked puzzled. Wednesday? The day of his scheduled testimony. Lady Catherine whispered, Mr. Holmes, I fear my husband is dead, and I fear I may be next. Holmes immediately set his investigative machinery into motion with the systematic precision that had made him London's most celebrated consulting detective. By afternoon, he and Watson had arrived at the Pembroke estate, a stately Georgian mansion in Belgravia, whose imposing facade belied the mysteries contained within its walls. The interviews with the household staff revealed troubling inconsistencies that only deepened the puzzle. Mr. Garrison, the butler, was a man of precise habits and meticulous timekeeping, qualities that made his testimony both valuable and perplexing. He stood ramrod straight in the servants' hall, his silver hair perfectly groomed despite the stress of recent events. The sound came at precisely 11:45 p.m., he stated with absolute certainty. I was winding the grandfather clock in the main hall when I heard it. Sharp, metallic, quite unlike anything I have heard in 30 years of service to this household. Mrs. Henley, however, painted a different picture entirely. The cook, a robust woman with flour perpetually dusting her apron and sharp eyes that missed nothing in her domain, was equally adamant about her version of events. Midnight it was, she declared, while kneading bread with vigorous emphasis. I was just finishing the washing up when that dreadful sound rang out. Gave me quite a start, it did. Sounded like someone dropping a metal lid in the courtyard, but sharper, more deliberate somehow. Holmes noted the 15-minute discrepancy with interest. Mrs. Henley, you are certain of the time? As certain as I am of my own name, Mr. Holmes. The kitchen clock chimed midnight not a moment before I heard that awful ping. The groundskeeper, a weathered man named Timothy Marsh, provided yet another layer of confusion. When questioned in the estate's garden shed, surrounded by the tools of his trade, his account shifted subtly with each retelling. Saw a figure near the stables, I did, he said initially, then moments later amended, well, perhaps it was more of a shadow. Could have been anyone, really. Or perhaps just the wind moving the trees. Holmes pressed him for details. What time was this, Mr. Marsh? Around 11:30, maybe quarter to midnight. Hard to say exactly. When you're my age, time becomes a bit fluid, if you take my meaning. Watson observed with growing frustration. How can three people hear the same sound at different times? but it was Lady Catherine's own shifting account that proved most intriguing. Initially, she had claimed to hear nothing from her bedroom on the opposite side of the house. However, under Holmes's gentle but persistent questioning, her story began to evolve. "Perhaps I did hear something," she admitted hesitantly. "A distant clang, maybe, but I thought it was just the night sounds of the house settling. Old houses make such noises, don't they?" Holmes conducted a thorough examination of Sir Edmund's study, a room that spoke of scholarly pursuits and methodical habits. Leather-bound volumes lined the walls, and a massive oak desk dominated the space. The sealed windows overlooked the courtyard, their heavy latches clearly untouched. Yet it was near these windows that Holmes made his first concrete discovery. Using his magnifying glass with the intensity of a scientist examining a specimen, he found microscopic metal filings scattered along the window frame. The particles were too small to be noticed by casual observation, but under careful scrutiny, they gleamed like tiny stars against the dark wood. "Watson," Holmes called, "observe these filings. What do you make of them?" Watson examined the evidence carefully. "They appear fresh, not oxidized. Someone has been working with metal tools near this window recently." "Precisely. And note their distribution. Not random, but concentrated in specific areas, as if created by repeated contact with the window frame itself." On Sir Edmund's desk, Holmes discovered a half-finished letter, its ink barely dry, suggesting it had been written on the night of his disappearance. The paper bore the letterhead of the Banking Commission, and the visible text read, "My dear Catherine, if you are reading this, then my fears have been justified. Those who would silence the truth have found their way to me. The evidence I have gathered points to corruption at the highest levels of—" The letter ended abruptly. The pen apparently dropped mid-sentence. Holmes also noted something peculiar about the room's acoustics. Clapping his hand sharply, he observed how sound traveled within the space. "Watson, position yourself in the courtyard and tell me what you hear." From below, Watson called up, "The sound is quite muffled, Holmes. These thick walls and sealed windows would dampen most interior noises significantly. Yet our witnesses heard the metallic sound clearly from various locations throughout the house." Holmes mused. "This suggests the sound originated not from within the study, but from somewhere with better acoustic transmission to the rest of the household." As the afternoon shadows lengthened, Holmes began his methodical testing of various metal objects against different surfaces around the estate, measuring their acoustic properties with the precision of a concert tuner. Holmes's acoustic experiments throughout the estate grounds revealed a revelation that fundamentally shifted the entire investigation. Standing in the courtyard with Watson, surrounded by various metal implements borrowed from the gardening shed and kitchen, he systematically tested the sound each object produced when struck against different surfaces. "Watson, listen carefully," Holmes instructed, striking a garden trowel against the stone courtyard. The sound was sharp but lacked the specific pitch described by the witnesses. A metal watering can produced a different tone entirely, too hollow, too resonant. Even the wrought iron garden gate, when manipulated to create a sharp sound, failed to match the acoustic signature they sought. It was when Holmes tested sounds from various positions around the estate that the crucial truth emerged. Standing beneath Sir Edmund's study window, he struck two pieces of metal together, creating a sharp ping. Watson, positioned in the kitchen, the main hall, and the servants' quarters in turn, confirmed what Holmes had begun to suspect. "I can hear it clearly from every location," Watson reported, slightly out of breath from his circuit of the house. "But Holmes, when you created the same sound from inside the study with the windows sealed, I could barely detect it from any of these positions." "Precisely, Watson. The metallic sound heard by our witnesses could not have originated from inside the locked study. The pitch, clarity, and volume described by Mr. Garrison, Mrs. Henley, and young Tommy all indicate an outdoor source, specifically from the courtyard area directly below Sir Edmund's window. This discovery eliminated their most obvious suspect. Timothy Marsh, the groundskeeper, had become the focus of Inspector Bradshaw's investigation due to his gambling debts and unrestricted access to the estate grounds. However, if the sound came from outside the study, rather than from Sir Edmund's disappearance itself, Marsh's presence near the stables actually provided him with an alibi rather than evidence of guilt. "But Holmes," Watson said, settling into a chair in the study, "if Sir Edmund didn't leave through the window, and the door remained locked from the inside, how did he vanish from the sealed room?" Holmes stood at the window, gazing down at the courtyard where their acoustic tests had taken place. That, my dear Watson, is precisely the wrong question. We have been approaching this mystery from an assumption that may be entirely false. What do you mean? We have assumed that Sir Edmund disappeared from this room on the night the metallic sound was heard. But what if the sound was not connected to his departure at all? What if it was something else entirely? Before Watson could respond, they were interrupted by a commotion from the main hall. Inspector Bradshaw's voice carried up the stairs, sharp with frustration and authority. Mrs. Henley, I must insist you allow us to search the pantry stores. Evidence may have been concealed anywhere in this household. Holmes and Watson descended to find the inspector directing a thorough search of the estate, his usual methodical approach now tinged with desperation. Bradshaw was a competent officer, but the pressure from his superiors was clearly mounting. Holmes, Bradshaw said, wiping perspiration from his brow, I'm glad you're here. We've discovered that someone has been systematically removing evidence from this house. Sir Edmund's correspondence, his financial documents, even his appointment diary, all vanished without a trace. When did you discover this? Holmes inquired. This morning. Lady Catherine granted us permission for a comprehensive search, and we found that virtually every document relating to Sir Edmund's banking investigation has been eliminated. Professional work, too. No ordinary burglar would know exactly which papers to target while leaving valuable items untouched. Mrs. Henley emerged from the kitchen, her face flushed with indignation. 30 years I've worked in this house, Inspector, and never has anyone questioned my honesty or suggested I would harbor evidence of wrongdoing. No one is questioning your character, Mrs. Henley, Holmes said diplomatically, but you have been observant of household routines. Have you noticed anyone behaving unusually in recent weeks? Anyone showing particular interest in Sir Edmund's study or his work? The cook paused in her protests, her expression becoming thoughtful. Well, now that you mention it, Mr. Holmes, there have been some odd occurrences, strange sounds at night, not just that dreadful ping from 3 nights ago. I've heard metallic noises for weeks, always very late, always brief. What sort of metallic noises? Similar to what we heard that night, but quieter, more careful-like, as if someone was practicing, if that makes sense. Holmes exchanged a meaningful look with Watson. Practicing suggests premeditation, a methodical approach to whatever task required that specific sound. Lady Catherine appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. Mr. Holmes, I've remembered something else. The telegram that arrived this morning. It wasn't the first. Edmund received a similar message 2 weeks ago, but he destroyed it immediately. He said it was nothing to concern myself with, but I could see it had disturbed him greatly. Do you recall any details of that earlier message? Only one phrase stayed with me because Edmund repeated it. The sound of silence approaches. I thought it was merely a philosophical reference, but now it appears far more sinister, Holmes concluded grimly. Lady Catherine's relief at learning the groundskeeper was no longer a suspect quickly transformed into something approaching panic when Holmes announced his intention to examine every piece of metal on the property. The comprehensive nature of this investigation would necessarily expose every corner of the household's private affairs, and her aristocratic sensibilities recoiled at such thoroughness. Surely, Mr. Holmes, such an extensive search is unnecessary, she protested, wringing her hands in a gesture that had become habitual since her husband's disappearance. We are a respectable household. Our staff has been with us for years, and I cannot believe any of them would be involved in Edmund's disappearance. Holmes observed her carefully, noting the subtle signs of distress that went beyond concern for her husband's fate. Lady Catherine, I understand your reservations, but someone with intimate knowledge of this household has been operating here for some time. The evidence suggests systematic preparation, detailed knowledge of routines, and access to areas that would be restricted to outsiders. Mr. Garrison, the butler, surprised everyone by becoming unusually helpful rather than defensive about the expanded investigation. His typically reserved demeanor gave way to an almost eager cooperation that seemed out of character for a man who had previously been protective of household privacy. I welcome the thorough examination, Mr. Holmes, Garrison declared, his posture straight as a military officer's. If there are secrets hidden in this house, they should be brought to light. I have served the Pembroke family with complete loyalty, and I want no shadows cast upon my reputation or that of the honest staff. He proceeded to volunteer information that had not been directly requested. Sir Edmund had been receiving visitors at unusual hours in recent weeks. Men who would not give their names, who insisted on meeting after the household had retired. I found this irregular, but Sir Edmund assured me these meetings concerned his parliamentary duties. Watson made careful notes. Can you describe these visitors? Professional men, well-dressed, but with an air of urgency about them. They carried leather portfolios and spoke in hushed tones. One gentleman in particular came 3 times in the past month, always insisting on complete privacy. Mrs. Henley, meanwhile, revealed additional concerns that painted a troubling picture of the weeks leading to Sir Edmund's disappearance. Her earlier defensiveness melted away as she began to recount strange observations she had previously dismissed as unimportant. I've been worried about those strange sounds for weeks now, not just the night Sir Edmund vanished, she confided while preparing tea with hands that trembled slightly. Late at night, past midnight usually, I would hear metallic clicking sounds coming from somewhere in the house. Never the same location twice, mind you, but always that distinctive sharp quality. Holmes leaned forward with interest. Did you investigate these sounds? Once or twice, but I never found anything amiss. Doors remained locked, windows secure, nothing out of place. I began to think perhaps it was just the old house settling, or maybe water pipes making noise. But now, knowing what we know, she shuddered visibly. These sounds occurred with any particular frequency? Every few nights, sometimes nightly for a week, then nothing for several days. But Mr. Holmes, looking back, I realized they seemed to follow a pattern. They were always on nights when Sir Edmund worked late in his study, and they always seemed to come from different parts of the house, as if someone was mapping the place. Young Tommy, the stable boy, was brought in for questioning and provided additional details that began to form a disturbing picture. At 17, he possessed the sharp eyes and ears of youth, combined with the natural curiosity that comes with his age. I seen someone in the courtyard several times over the past month, Tommy reported, his accent revealing his working-class origins. Never got a clear look at the face, mind you, but it was always the same figure. Medium height, dark coat, moving very deliberate-like around the grounds. What time of night was this? Watson asked. Past 11, usually closer to midnight, always after Sir Edmund's study light went out. This person would appear in the courtyard, spend a few minutes near the house, then disappear toward the back gardens. Never stayed long enough for me to get a proper look, but something about the way they moved. It was like they knew exactly where they were going. Holmes stood and walked to the window overlooking the courtyard. Tommy, from your position in the stables, could you observe someone working near the base of this window? Aye, sir. Clear view of that whole area. If someone was tampering with the house itself, I'd have seen it. The psychological profile emerging from these interviews revealed Sir Edmund as a man of rigid habits whose growing paranoia in his final weeks represented a dramatic departure from his normal behavior. Lady Catherine admitted that her husband had become increasingly methodical about security, checking locks multiple times each night and insisting on new procedures for handling correspondence. He started burning all sensitive documents immediately after reading them, she revealed. Said he couldn't risk them falling into the wrong hands. The only papers he kept were those he planned to present to Parliament, and even those he moved to a different location each night. This pattern of behavior suggested Sir Edmund was aware of the threat against him and had been taking precautions that ultimately proved insufficient. Holmes's investigation into Sir Edmund's financial affairs revealed a web of corruption that extended far beyond a simple murder case. The banking scandal that Sir Edmund had been preparing to expose involved several of London's most prestigious financial institutions, and the stakes were far higher than anyone had initially realized. Working with Inspector Bradshaw's contacts at Scotland Yard, Holmes gained access to Sir Edmund's preliminary findings, which had been secured in a vault at the Bank of England before his disappearance. The documents painted a picture of systematic fraud involving falsified investment records, embezzled funds, and forged government bonds totaling millions of pounds. Watson, Holmes said, studying the financial records spread across their sitting room table at Baker Street. This is not merely corruption. It is a conspiracy that threatens the stability of Britain's entire banking system. Sir Edmund had uncovered evidence that several major banks were operating essentially fraudulent schemes, using depositors' money to cover their losses from failed speculative investments. The scope of the scandal explained why multiple parties had motives to silence Sir Edmund. The documents identified corrupt bank officials, complicit government inspectors, and wealthy investors who had profited from insider knowledge. Any one of these individuals had sufficient motive and resources to arrange Sir Edmund's elimination. But Holmes, Watson observed, if so many people wanted Sir Edmund silenced, why the elaborate method? Why not simply arrange an accident or a robbery gone wrong? An excellent question, Watson. The answer lies in the psychological profile of our perpetrator. The metallic sound is not merely a tool, it is a signature, a calling card that speaks to an ego that demands recognition for its cleverness. Holmes had discovered that Sir Edmund's case was not isolated. Through his network of contacts in the criminal underworld, he learned of 3 other recent disappearances that shared disturbing similarities. In each case, the victim had been involved in exposing financial irregularities, and in each case, witnesses reported hearing an unusual metallic sound just before or during the time of disappearance. The first case involved Mr. Charles Whitmore, a bank examiner who had discovered discrepancies in loan documentation. He vanished from his locked office at the Bank of Commerce 3 months earlier, with witnesses reporting a sharp metallic ping at approximately 11:30 p.m. The second case concerned Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, a wealthy widow who had threatened to expose her late husband's business partner for embezzling from their joint ventures. She disappeared from her locked carriage while traveling through Hyde Park, with her driver reporting a distinctive metallic sound moments before discovering her absence. The third victim was Dr. Reginald Cross, a forensic accountant who had been preparing testimony about fraudulent insurance claims. He vanished from his locked laboratory, with colleagues hearing the now familiar metallic signature just before midnight. The pattern is unmistakable, Holmes concluded. We are dealing with a serial killer who specializes in eliminating threats to a vast financial conspiracy. The precision timing, the locked room disappearances, and the acoustic signature all point to a methodical killer with access to sophisticated equipment and detailed knowledge of their victims' routines. Holmes's investigation revealed that each victim had been approached by mysterious visitors in the weeks before their disappearance. Visitors who refused to identify themselves but claimed to represent interested parties, willing to pay substantial sums for silence. Inspector Bradshaw provided additional troubling information from Scotland Yard's files. Holmes, we've been ordered to close these cases quickly. Pressure is coming from very high levels, citing national security concerns and the need to maintain confidence in Britain's financial institutions. Pressure from whom specifically? Holmes inquired. That's just it. No one will say exactly. The orders come through channels, always verbal, never written. But the message is clear. These investigations are becoming politically inconvenient. This institutional resistance suggested the conspiracy reached into government circles, making Holmes's investigation not only dangerous but potentially treasonous in the eyes of those who preferred the truth remain buried. Holmes also uncovered evidence of a parallel investigation being conducted by a mysterious figure known only as the accountant. This individual had been making inquiries about the same financial irregularities that Sir Edmund was investigating, but from a different angle. Rather than seeking to expose the corruption, the accountant appeared to be cataloging it for purposes unknown. Watson, I believe we are dealing with someone who has turned investigation into a weapon. This person has detailed knowledge of financial crimes not to expose them, but to use them as leverage for elimination of threats. A breakthrough came when Holmes learned that all 4 victims had received the same type of telegram in the days before their disappearance. The messages varied in wording but shared common phrases. Sound of truth, silence is golden, and references to specific days that corresponded to scheduled testimonies or meetings. The killer is not simply reactive, Holmes realized. They are proactive, monitoring potential threats and eliminating them before they can cause damage to the conspiracy. This revelation meant that Lady Catherine was almost certainly in immediate danger, as her husband's testimony date approached and his prepared evidence remained a threat to the conspirators. The emotional weight of the investigation reached its crescendo when Lady Catherine finally broke down completely, revealing truths she had been too frightened to share, even with Holmes. In the privacy of her drawing room, with curtains drawn against the gray London afternoon, she collapsed into tears that seemed to contain weeks of suppressed terror. "Mr. Holmes," she sobbed, her aristocratic composure finally shattered. "I have not been entirely truthful with you. Edmund's growing paranoia in his final weeks was not merely about his banking investigation. He had discovered something about his own family's past, something that connected him to these financial crimes in ways that made his situation far more personal and dangerous. Holmes waited patiently as she composed herself enough to continue, understanding that rushing her would only result in incomplete revelations. 20 years ago, Edmund's father, Sir Reginald Pembroke, died under mysterious circumstances while investigating similar financial irregularities. The official cause was heart failure, but Edmund had begun to suspect his father was murdered using the same methods now being employed against him. Watson leaned forward with interest. What evidence did Sir Edmund find? Hidden among his father's papers, which Edmund only recently discovered in a sealed portion of our family vault, was correspondence describing metallic sounds heard on the night of his father's death. The letters were from household staff, dismissed at the time as superstitious nonsense, but they described the same acoustic signature we have been investigating. Holmes's expression grew grave. Lady Catherine, this suggests our killer has been operating for decades, perfecting their methods and expanding their influence within the financial community. There is more, Mr. Holmes. Edmund found evidence that his father had been working with someone he trusted, someone who had access to family documents and household routines. The night before his death, Sir Reginald wrote in his diary about a crucial meeting with the one person who could help expose the truth. That person was never identified, and after his death, several key documents disappeared from his study. This revelation cast the current investigation in an entirely new light. The killer was not simply someone who had learned about the Pembroke family's investigation. They were someone who had been involved in silencing the family for over 2 decades. Edmund became convinced that whoever killed his father was still alive, still active, and still eliminating threats to their financial empire. He began to see patterns in seemingly unrelated deaths among the banking community, deaths that had been attributed to natural causes but shared certain unusual circumstances. Holmes stood and began pacing, his mind working through the implications. Did Sir Edmund share his suspicions with anyone else? Only one person, Mr. Holmes. His business partner, Mr. Nathaniel Blackwood. They had known each other since childhood, and Edmund trusted him completely. Mr. Blackwood was the only person Edmund confided in about his father's death and his own investigation. Watson made a note of the name. Has Mr. Blackwood been involved in the current investigation? Lady Catherine's expression became troubled. That is what concerns me most, Dr. Watson. Since Edmund's disappearance, Mr. Blackwood has been remarkably helpful in managing our financial affairs and dealing with the authorities. He has taken care of matters that would normally require Edmund's personal attention, and he has been most insistent that I not pursue this investigation too vigorously. Has he visited the house recently? Holmes inquired. Several times, actually. He came to offer condolences immediately after Edmund's disappearance, and he has returned twice since then to help with business matters. He is familiar with our household routines, having been a frequent guest for over 20 years. Holmes stopped pacing abruptly. Lady Catherine, I must ask you a difficult question. During Mr. Blackwood's recent visits, have you heard any unusual sounds? Any metallic noises that might have seemed coincidental or easily explained? Her face went pale. Oh, dear God, Mr. Holmes. Yes, twice I have heard brief metallic sounds during his visits, but I attributed them to his pocket watch or perhaps keys in his coat. He always carries various items for his business affairs. When were these visits? The first was 2 days after Edmund's disappearance. The second was yesterday morning. He claimed to be reviewing Edmund's business correspondence to ensure nothing urgent was overlooked. Watson looked up sharply from his notes. Yesterday morning? Lady Catherine, did Mr. Blackwood have access to Sir Edmund's study during this visit? Yes, I gave him the key myself. He said he needed to review Edmund's files to prepare for meetings with their clients. He spent nearly 2 hours in the study alone. Holmes's expression had become extremely serious. Lady Catherine, I believe you are in immediate danger. Mr. Blackwood's access to your household, his knowledge of your family's investigation, and his presence during the sounds you described all point to a conclusion I had hoped to avoid. You believe Nathaniel is involved in Edmund's disappearance? I believe, Lady Catherine, that Mr. Blackwood may be our killer, and if that is true, your continued survival represents an unacceptable risk to his long-term security. The revelation hit her like a physical blow, and she staggered backward into her chair. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. The truth we're uncovering gets even more shocking from here. Holmes's systematic analysis of the acoustic evidence revealed a pattern that extended far beyond the Pembroke case. connecting the mysterious metallic sound to a series of unexplained deaths and disappearances across London's financial district. Working through the night in his chemical laboratory at Baker Street, Holmes had been conducting precise acoustic experiments that would prove crucial to solving the case. "Watson," Holmes announced, emerging from his laboratory with a collection of metal objects and acoustic measuring devices, "I have identified the exact source and mechanism of our killer's signature sound. It is not merely a byproduct of their method, it is an integral part of a sophisticated elimination technique that has been perfected over many years." The metallic sound, Holmes discovered, was produced by a specialized spring-loaded mechanism designed for use in high-security banking vaults. The device could be programmed to activate at precise times, creating the distinctive acoustic signature while simultaneously releasing or triggering other mechanisms. "The killer has access to advanced banking security equipment, Watson. This is not a common criminal using improvised tools. This is someone with professional connections to the financial industry's most sophisticated security systems." Holmes had also uncovered evidence linking the acoustic signature to 3 additional locations, beyond those they had previously identified. The sound had been reported at the Bank of Commerce, the Imperial Insurance Building, and the Treasury Annex, all locations where potential witnesses to the banking scandal had either died or disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Each incident occurred at precisely 11:47 p.m., Holmes noted, consulting his meticulously maintained timeline. "This is not coincidence, Watson. It indicates a methodical killer who operates according to a rigid schedule, possibly coordinated with other activities or accomplices." The pattern revealed something even more disturbing. The killer was systematically eliminating witnesses in order of their scheduled testimonies. Sir Edmund had been due to testify first, making him the primary target. But Holmes realized that several other potential witnesses remained on the killer's list, and each would be eliminated in turn unless the conspiracy was exposed. Inspector Bradshaw arrived at Baker Street with news that both vindicated Holmes's theories and escalated the urgency of their investigation. "Holmes, we've received reports of the metallic sound at 2 additional locations last night. Both involved men who were scheduled to provide evidence in banking investigations. Were there any survivors?" Holmes asked grimly. "1. Mr. James Morrison, a bank clerk who had reported irregularities in loan documentation, heard the sound outside his lodgings but was warned by a neighbor's dog and fled through a back entrance. He is currently in protective custody, but he is terrified and refuses to provide testimony unless we can guarantee his safety." Watson looked up from his notes. "That's the first time we have a witness who survived an encounter with our killer." "Indeed," Holmes replied, "and Mr. Morrison's survival may provide us with the detailed observations we need to identify our perpetrator conclusively." Holmes's investigation had also revealed the killer's psychological profile with increasing clarity. The precision timing, the acoustic signature, and the methodical elimination of witnesses all pointed to someone with obsessive-compulsive tendencies who took pride in their technical expertise. "Watson, our killer is not simply eliminating threats. They are conducting a demonstration of their superiority over law enforcement and security systems. The metallic sound serves as a calling card, a way of claiming credit for their work while simultaneously taunting those who cannot stop them." The financial evidence Holmes had been analyzing revealed that the banking conspiracy involved not just embezzlement, but a systematic manipulation of Britain's currency reserves. The criminals were essentially counterfeiting government bonds and using them as collateral for loans they never intended to repay. The scope of this conspiracy, Watson, threatens not just individual banks, but the stability of Britain's entire monetary system. The perpetrators have stolen millions of pounds and compromised the integrity of government financial instruments. Holmes realized that the killer's methodical approach meant they maintained detailed records of their activities, probably including plans for future eliminations. Finding these records would provide both evidence for prosecution and intelligence to prevent additional murders. The killer's precision suggests they work from detailed plans, probably including floor plans of target locations, schedules of victims' routines, and technical specifications for their elimination methods. These plans must be hidden somewhere the killer can access them regularly, but where they will not be discovered by casual observation. An urgent telegram arrived from Lady Catherine just as Holmes was preparing to share his conclusions with Watson. The message was brief but terrifying. "Mr. Blackwood coming to dinner tonight. Heard metallic sound from courtyard this afternoon. Fear the worst. Please help." Holmes immediately understood the implications. The killer was preparing for a final elimination, one that would remove the last witness to Sir Edmund's investigation, while appearing to be a social visit from a trusted family friend. "Watson, prepare your service revolver. We must reach the Pembroke estate before nightfall, or Lady Catherine will become the next victim of this methodical killer." The race against time had begun, and Holmes knew that their adversary's precision and planning would make this confrontation the most dangerous of his career. The afternoon's discoveries led Holmes to a crucial breakthrough in understanding the killer's technical methods and operational base. Through his network of contacts in London's specialized trades, Holmes had traced the spring-loaded mechanism to its source, a small but highly specialized firm that manufactured security devices for banks, government vaults, and private safes. "Watson," Holmes announced, returning from his investigation of the manufacturing district, "our killer has access to Pemberton and Associates, a firm that produces the most sophisticated locking and timing mechanisms in London. More significantly, they maintain detailed records of every device they have manufactured, including custom modifications requested by specific clients." The firm's records revealed that over the past 5 years, someone had been ordering increasingly sophisticated timing devices, each more precise and versatile than the last. The orders were placed under the name of a fictional security consulting firm, but payment was made through a series of bank drafts that Holmes was able to trace back through the financial system. "The payment trail leads to an account controlled by Nathaniel Blackwood," Holmes continued grimly. "But more importantly, the specifications for these devices reveal exactly how our killer has been accomplishing these seemingly impossible disappearances." Holmes had discovered that the latest devices ordered by the killer included a mechanism that could be remotely triggered to create the characteristic metallic sound, while simultaneously activating other components. These could include releasing gas to render victims unconscious, triggering spring-loaded panels to create hidden passages, or activating pulley systems to transport unconscious victims through concealed routes. "The killer has essentially turned each crime scene into a carefully engineered machine, Watson. The metallic sound is not just a signature. It is the audible indication that the elimination mechanism has been activated." Watson studied the technical drawings Holmes had obtained from Pemberton and Associates. "But Holmes, these mechanisms would require extensive modification to the buildings where they are installed. How could such work be accomplished without detection?" "An excellent question, which led me to investigate building permits and renovation records for all the locations where the metallic sound has been reported. In each case, Blackwood's consulting firm performed security upgrades within the past year, giving him unlimited access to install his elimination mechanisms. The renovation records revealed a pattern of systematic preparation that extended back over 2 years. Blackwood had been identifying potential threats to the banking conspiracy and preparing elimination sites well in advance of when they would be needed. Sir Edmund's study, Watson, was modified 6 months ago under the pretense of installing updated window security. The work was done by Blackwood's own workmen, giving him complete control over what mechanisms were installed and how they could be accessed. Holmes had also solved the mystery of how victims were being removed from locked rooms. The spring-loaded mechanisms included panels that could open briefly to allow unconscious victims to be extracted, then close automatically, leaving no trace of their existence. The victims are not actually disappearing from locked rooms, Watson. They are being removed through temporary openings that seal themselves after use. The rooms appear undisturbed because the extraction process has been engineered to leave no evidence. Watson looked up from the technical specifications. "But what happens to the victims after they are extracted?" Holmes's expression became grave. "Based on the locations where Blackwood performed his security upgrades, I believe there is an extensive network of tunnels and hidden passages connecting various buildings in the financial district. The victims are transported through these passages to a central location where they are permanently silenced." This discovery explained why no bodies had been found despite multiple disappearances. The killer was not simply murdering victims at their locations of disappearance. He was transporting them elsewhere for elimination, then disposing of the bodies through methods that left no trace. Holmes had traced the tunnel network through city planning records, discovering that Blackwood had legitimate access to underground passages that connected several major banks. His security consulting firm had been contracted to upgrade these tunnel security systems, giving him detailed knowledge of their layout and the ability to modify them for his purposes. The false lead about the debt collector, Watson, has transformed into valuable intelligence. The man was actually one of Blackwood's operatives, conducting surveillance on potential victims to gather information about their routines and security arrangements. Through his contacts in the criminal underworld, Holmes learned that Blackwood maintained a small but efficient network of accomplices, all of whom believed they were working for legitimate security operations. None of them understood the true purpose of their activities, making them unlikely to provide evidence even if discovered. Blackwood has created the perfect criminal organization, Watson. His operatives perform their tasks without understanding their criminal nature. His technical methods leave no physical evidence, and his victims simply vanish without a trace. The most disturbing revelation was that Blackwood's elimination network was not limited to the current banking scandal. Holmes found evidence that similar mechanisms had been used to eliminate witnesses and threats related to other criminal enterprises over the past decade. We are dealing with more than a killer, Watson. We are confronting a criminal mastermind who has industrialized murder and turned elimination into a precise technical process. Holmes knew that confronting such a methodical and well-equipped adversary would require careful planning and considerable risk. The critical moment of revelation arrived when Holmes assembled all the evidence into a comprehensive theory that explained not only the methodology but the complete scope of Nathaniel Blackwood's criminal enterprise. Working late into the evening at Baker Street, Holmes constructed a detailed model of how the elimination system operated and why it had remained undetected for so long. "Watson," Holmes declared, spreading maps and technical diagrams across their sitting room table, "Blackwood has created the most sophisticated criminal operation I have ever encountered. He has not simply been eliminating witnesses, he has been operating a comprehensive intelligence and elimination service for multiple criminal organizations throughout London." The evidence revealed that Blackwood's security consulting firm served as a front for gathering intelligence on potential threats to various criminal enterprises. By legitimately accessing buildings and security systems, he could identify vulnerabilities, monitor communications, and prepare elimination sites for future use. His clients extend far beyond our banking conspiracy, Watson. I have found evidence linking his elimination services to organized smuggling rings, corrupt government officials, and even foreign intelligence operations. Sir Edmund's investigation threatened to expose not just financial crimes, but an entire network of criminal collaboration. Holmes had discovered that Blackwood maintained detailed profiles on hundreds of potential targets, including their daily routines, security arrangements, and connections to criminal activities. This intelligence network allowed him to eliminate threats before they became dangerous, while simultaneously providing valuable information to his criminal clients. The metallic sound serves multiple purposes in his operation. It functions as a calling card to claim credit for successful eliminations, as a psychological weapon to terrorize potential witnesses, and as a timing signal to coordinate the activities of his operatives. The timing of elimination events was not random but carefully calculated to maximize the disruption to criminal investigations while minimizing the risk of detection. Blackwood's precision timing ensured that his operations occurred when security was minimal and potential witnesses were isolated. Watson studied the operational timeline Holmes had constructed. But Holmes, how has he maintained this level of activity without arousing suspicion from Scotland Yard or other investigators? Because, Watson, Blackwood has been providing legitimate security services to law enforcement agencies while simultaneously operating his criminal enterprise. His consulting firm has contracts with Scotland Yard itself, giving him access to investigation plans and the ability to stay ahead of any threats to his operation. Holmes had uncovered evidence that Blackwood received advance warning of police investigations through his legitimate contacts within law enforcement. This intelligence allowed him to eliminate threats before they could provide evidence and to modify his operations to avoid detection. Inspector Bradshaw himself has been unknowingly providing Blackwood with information about our investigation. The pressure to close these cases quickly that Bradshaw mentioned, those orders are coming from officials who are either corrupt or being manipulated by Blackwood's intelligence network. The scope of the conspiracy extended into government circles, where Blackwood's elimination services had been used to silence whistleblowers and protect corrupt officials. His ability to make people disappear without trace made him invaluable to those who needed problems eliminated discreetly. Holmes realized that confronting Blackwood directly would be extremely dangerous, as his intelligence network would provide advance warning of any official action against him. However, Holmes had identified a critical vulnerability in Blackwood's operation. his obsessive need to maintain his elimination schedule. Blackwood's psychological profile indicates he cannot tolerate disruption to his methodical approach, Watson. His precision timing and systematic methods are both his strength and his weakness. If we can force him to deviate from his established patterns, we can create opportunities to gather evidence and protect potential victims. The plan Holmes devised involved using Lady Catherine as bait while creating the appearance that she possessed evidence that could expose Blackwood's entire operation. By making Blackwood believe that his elimination of Lady Catherine required immediate action, Holmes hoped to force him into a premature move that would provide the evidence needed for his arrest. We must make Blackwood believe that Lady Catherine has discovered his connection to her husband's disappearance and his father's death 20 years ago. His need to eliminate this threat will override his usual caution and force him to act during our surveillance. Holmes had arranged for Lady Catherine to publicly announce the discovery of new evidence related to her husband's investigation, creating the impression that she possessed information that could expose the entire banking conspiracy. This announcement would force Blackwood to attempt her elimination before she could share this evidence with authorities. The trap must appear completely natural, Watson. Blackwood's intelligence network will detect any obvious police presence or unusual security arrangements. We must create a situation where he believes he can carry out the elimination according to his normal methods while we gather the evidence needed to prove his guilt. The psychological pressure on Blackwood would be enormous. His entire criminal empire depended on maintaining the appearance of natural deaths and unexplained disappearances. If Lady Catherine's evidence threatened to expose his methods, his survival would require her immediate elimination. Holmes knew that this confrontation would determine not only Lady Catherine's fate, but the future of Blackwood's entire criminal network. Success would expose decades of criminal activity and save countless future victims. Holmes orchestrated the most carefully planned confrontation of his career, turning the Pembroke estate into an elaborate trap designed to capture Nathaniel Blackwood in the act of attempted murder. Every detail had been meticulously arranged to appear natural while providing maximum opportunity for evidence gathering and victim protection. The estate's layout provided ideal conditions for the operation. Watson positioned himself in Sir Edmund's study, equipped with a camera and recording equipment hidden behind the heavy curtains. Inspector Bradshaw, despite his unknowing role in providing intelligence to Blackwood, was stationed in the conservatory with a clear view of the courtyard and main approaches to the house. Holmes himself took control of the overall operation from the servants' quarters, where he could monitor both the house's interior and the extensive tunnel network he had discovered beneath the estate. He had mapped every possible route Blackwood might use to approach the house and prepared countermeasures for each scenario. Lady Catherine, despite her terror, performed her role with remarkable courage. She had publicly announced the discovery of her husband's hidden evidence at an afternoon tea with several prominent society ladies, ensuring that news of her revelation would reach Blackwood within hours. "I have found Edmund's secret files," she had announced to her guests, her voice carrying just the right mixture of triumph and fear. "Evidence that proves not only who killed him, but who has been eliminating witnesses to financial crimes for over 20 years. I plan to share this evidence with Parliament tomorrow morning." The psychological trap was irresistible. Blackwood's entire criminal empire depended on maintaining the secrecy of his methods. Lady Catherine's announcement threatened not just his current operations but his past crimes as well, including the murder of Sir Edmund's father 2 decades earlier. Holmes knew that Blackwood would be forced to act immediately, despite the risk. His usual methodical approach would be abandoned in favor of urgent elimination before Lady Catherine could share her supposed evidence. The evening fog provided perfect cover for the operation, muffling sounds and obscuring vision while allowing Holmes's team to maintain surveillance through carefully positioned mirrors and listening devices. The estate's metal fixtures, ironically, would amplify any sounds Blackwood made while attempting his elimination. As midnight approached, the trap began to spring. Holmes detected movement in the underground passages beneath the estate, confirming his theory about Blackwood's access routes. The killer was approaching through the tunnel system, exactly as Holmes had predicted. "Watson," Holmes whispered through their communication system. "Movement detected in passage 3. He's approaching the study from below, just as we anticipated." Blackwood emerged from a concealed panel in the study's floor, his movements precise and practiced. He carried a leather satchel containing his specialized elimination equipment, including the spring-loaded mechanism that created his signature metallic sound. Watson, hidden behind the curtains, watched as Blackwood methodically prepared his device. The killer's confidence was evident. He believed he was operating in complete secrecy, following his established pattern of elimination. "The device is positioned, Holmes," Watson reported quietly. "He's setting the timer mechanism now." Blackwood's fatal mistake was his adherence to his rigid schedule. Despite the urgent nature of this elimination, he could not resist following his established timing protocol. The device was set to activate at precisely 11:47 p.m., just as it had during every previous elimination. Holmes had anticipated this psychological compulsion and positioned his recording equipment to capture both the mechanical sounds and Blackwood's verbal instructions to his device. The killer, believing himself alone, spoke aloud while calibrating his mechanism. 11:47 as always," Blackwood muttered. "Lady Catherine's interference ends tonight, just like her husband's, just like his father's before him." The confession was exactly what Holmes needed. Not only did it confirm Blackwood's guilt in Sir Edmund's disappearance, but it also provided evidence of his role in the earlier murder of Sir Edmund's father. Inspector Bradshaw, positioned in the courtyard, observed Blackwood's accomplice arriving to assist with body disposal. The accomplice, unaware of the surveillance, carried additional equipment, including restraints and transportation materials. "Second suspect in custody position, Holmes," Bradshaw reported. "Ready to move on your signal." The climactic moment arrived as Blackwood activated his spring-loaded mechanism. Instead of the elimination device he expected, the mechanism triggered Holmes's recording apparatus, capturing not only the distinctive metallic sound, but also clear evidence of Blackwood's fingerprints and his attempted murder of Lady Catherine. The final phase of the trap reached maximum tension as Blackwood realized his mechanism had been compromised. Instead of the expected chemical release that would render Lady Catherine unconscious, the device produced only Holmes's recording equipment and a series of photographic flashes that documented every detail of his attempted murder. "Impossible," Blackwood exclaimed, his usual composure shattered as he examined his device. "The mechanism has been altered." Holmes emerged from his concealment, his service revolver trained on the killer. "Not altered, Mr. Blackwood. Replaced. Your methodical nature made it simple to predict exactly where and when you would position your elimination device." Blackwood's psychological profile proved accurate even in crisis. Rather than attempting immediate escape, he became fixated on understanding how his perfect system had been compromised. His obsessive need for technical precision overrode his survival instincts. "You couldn't possibly have known about the timing mechanism," Blackwood insisted, his voice carrying a mixture of professional pride and growing panic. "The spring-loaded system is my own design, calibrated to precise specifications." "Indeed it is," Holmes replied calmly, "and your pride in that technical achievement has been your downfall. Every elimination device you have used for the past 5 years carries your mechanical signature. The spring tension, the release timing, the acoustic properties, all as distinctive as a fingerprint." Watson emerged from his hiding place, camera equipment in hand. "Every moment has been recorded, Blackwood. Your confession, your methods, your attempt on Lady Catherine's life, all documented with evidence that will stand up in any court." The revelation that his entire operation had been compromised sent Blackwood into a rage that revealed the true extent of his criminal enterprise. In his fury, he began detailing his methods and justifying his actions, providing even more evidence of his guilt. 20 years I have been protecting the financial stability of this empire," he shouted, "eliminating threats, silencing those who would destroy the economic foundation of Britain itself. Sir Edmund and his father were naive idealists who couldn't understand the greater good." "The greater good?" Lady Catherine appeared in the doorway, her voice steady despite her terror. "You murdered my husband and his father to protect criminals who were stealing millions from honest investors." Blackwood's accomplice, realizing the operation had been compromised, attempted to flee through the tunnel system. However, Inspector Bradshaw had anticipated this route and was waiting with additional constables at every exit point. "The tunnel network you believed was secret has been under surveillance for days," Holmes informed Blackwood. "Every entrance, every passage, every hiding place, all monitored and secured." The capture of Blackwood's accomplice provided the final piece of evidence needed to expose the entire elimination network. Under interrogation, the accomplice revealed the locations of Blackwood's operational bases, his client lists, and most importantly, the burial sites where victims' bodies had been disposed of. Holmes had solved not just Sir Edmund's disappearance, but decades of unexplained deaths and disappearances throughout London's financial district. The evidence gathered during the trap would expose corruption at the highest levels of government and banking. Your signature metallic sound, which you believed was untraceable, has become the key to solving every crime you committed, Holmes explained as the constable secured Blackwood in restraints. The acoustic analysis connects you to every elimination site, every victim, every crime scene. The psychological satisfaction Blackwood had derived from his signature calling card proved to be his ultimate weakness. His need for recognition and professional pride had created an unbroken chain of evidence linking him to years of criminal activity. Lady Catherine approached the captured killer with remarkable composure. "Nathaniel, Edmund trusted you like a brother. How could you betray that friendship so completely?" "Edmund was going to destroy everything," Blackwood replied, his voice now hollow with defeat. "The banking system, the government connections, the entire network of relationships that keep this empire functioning. I had no choice." "You had every choice," Holmes corrected. "You chose profit over principle, criminality over justice, murder over morality. Those choices led inevitably to this moment." As the constables prepared to transport Blackwood to custody, Holmes retrieved the small metal mechanism that had served as the killer's signature for so many years. The device that had terrorized witnesses and announced death would now serve as evidence in the trial that would expose one of London's most sophisticated criminal enterprises. Inspector Bradshaw approached with final reports from the capture operation. "Holmes, we've secured all tunnel entrances and recovered extensive documentation from Blackwood's operational bases. This evidence will expose criminal connections throughout London's financial and political establishment." The trap had succeeded beyond Holmes's expectations, not only capturing a serial killer but exposing a vast conspiracy that had corrupted Britain's financial institutions for decades. Make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because the conclusion to this incredible case will reveal shocking truths about Victorian London's darkest secrets. The climactic confrontation reached its peak when Blackwood, in desperation, activated his most sophisticated elimination device one final time. However, Holmes had anticipated this final gambit and turned the killer's own technology against him in a brilliant demonstration of detective work and engineering precision. Blackwood, realizing his capture was imminent, reached for a backup device concealed in his coat, a portable version of his spring-loaded mechanism designed for emergency eliminations. The device was intended to release a lethal gas while creating the distinctive metallic sound that had become his trademark. "You may have discovered my methods, Holmes," Blackwood snarled, "but you cannot prevent this final elimination. Lady Catherine's testimony dies with her tonight." However, Holmes had prepared for exactly this scenario. Working with the technical experts at Pemberton and Associates, he had created a sophisticated acoustic trap that would turn Blackwood's signature sound against him. "Activate your device, Mr. Blackwood," Holmes said calmly. "I'm curious to see how it performs under these conditions." Blackwood triggered his mechanism, expecting the familiar metallic ping followed by the release of deadly gas. Instead, the sound activated Holmes's carefully positioned acoustic amplification system, which had been calibrated to respond specifically to Blackwood's signature frequency. The metallic ping echoed through the courtyard with tremendous amplification, but instead of gas, the device released a cloud of harmless marking powder that covered Blackwood from head to foot in bright red dust. Simultaneously, the amplified sound triggered photographic equipment positioned throughout the estate, creating a comprehensive visual record of Blackwood's final attempted murder. "Impossible," Blackwood exclaimed, staring at his powder-covered hands. "The mechanism has been completely altered." "Not altered, Mr. Blackwood. Improved," Holmes replied with satisfaction. "Your signature sound now serves as evidence rather than an instrument of death. The acoustic trigger you developed has been adapted to document your crimes rather than facilitate them." The recording apparatus Holmes had installed captured not only the sound, but also Blackwood's fingerprints, his verbal confession, and his attempt to murder Lady Catherine. The evidence was irrefutable and comprehensive, providing everything needed for prosecution. Watson emerged from concealment with additional recording equipment. "Every word, every action, every technical detail has been documented, Blackwood. Your own methods have provided the evidence for your conviction." The psychological impact of seeing his perfect elimination system turned against him broke Blackwood's remaining composure. In his rage and frustration, he began detailing his entire criminal operation, providing evidence of crimes that Holmes had not even suspected. 15 years of perfect eliminations, Blackwood shouted. Dozens of threats eliminated, millions of pounds in criminal profits protected, and an entire network of operations secured. You cannot possibly understand the scope of what you are destroying. On the contrary, Holmes replied, I understand it completely. That is why it must be destroyed. Lady Catherine, who had been hidden in a secure location during the confrontation, now appeared to face her husband's killer directly. Her courage in confronting the man who had terrorized her family for decades was remarkable. Edmund died believing in justice and truth, she said firmly. His testimony will be heard, even if you silenced his voice. The evidence he gathered will expose every criminal you protected. The final piece of evidence came from the most unexpected source, Blackwood's own elimination device. Holmes had discovered that the killer's obsessive record-keeping included detailed logs stored within each device's memory mechanism. These logs contained dates, locations, and victims of every elimination Blackwood had performed. Your technical precision, which you believed made you untouchable, has actually created a complete record of your crimes, Holmes explained as he examined the device's internal components. Every elimination is documented, every victim identified, every crime recorded in mechanical detail. Inspector Bradshaw approached with his final report. Holmes, the tunnel searches have uncovered burial sites for 12 victims, along with documentation linking Blackwood to criminal organizations throughout Europe. This case will expose international criminal connections we never suspected existed. The metallic ping that had announced so many deaths now echoed one final time through the Pembroke estate courtyard, but this time it announced justice rather than murder. The sound that had terrorized witnesses and victims for decades had become the instrument of truth that would ensure Blackwood's conviction and the exposure of his vast criminal network. Holmes retained the small metal mechanism as evidence, but also as a reminder of how the smallest details can contain the greatest truths. The signature sound that had seemed so mysterious and untraceable had ultimately provided the key to solving not just one murder, but decades of criminal activity. Justice, like truth, often announces itself quietly, Holmes observed as Blackwood was led away in custody. But for those who listen carefully, the sound is unmistakable. The resolution of the Blackwood case brought justice not only for Sir Edmund Pembroke, but for dozens of victims whose disappearances had remained unsolved for decades. The evidence gathered during Holmes's investigation exposed a criminal network that had corrupted Britain's financial institutions at the highest levels, leading to arrests, prosecutions, and reforms that would protect future whistleblowers and honest investigators. Sir Edmund Pembroke received a posthumous honor from Parliament, recognizing his courage in exposing financial corruption despite the mortal danger his investigation had placed him in. His prepared testimony, recovered from Blackwood's hiding places, provided crucial evidence that led to the conviction of corrupt banking officials, government inspectors, and wealthy investors who had profited from the conspiracy. The technical evidence Holmes had gathered proved decisive in court. The acoustic analysis of Blackwood's signature sound, combined with the mechanical evidence from his elimination devices, created an unbreakable chain of proof linking him to every crime. The killer's obsessive record-keeping, intended to perfect his methods, instead provided prosecutors with detailed documentation of his entire criminal career. Lady Catherine Pembroke, displaying remarkable strength in the aftermath of her ordeal, established the Edmund Pembroke Foundation for Financial Justice, an organization dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and supporting investigations into financial crimes. The foundation's work ensured that her husband's sacrifice would create lasting change, rather than merely resolving a single case. Edmund always believed that truth, once spoken, could never be completely silenced, Lady Catherine said at the foundation's inaugural ceremony. Even though his voice was stilled, his words continue to protect others who dare to speak against corruption. The Blackwood investigation also led to significant reforms in how financial crimes were investigated and prosecuted. The sophisticated methods the killer had used to eliminate witnesses prompted new security protocols for protecting those who reported financial irregularities. Holmes's technical innovations in acoustic analysis became standard tools for criminal investigations. Inspector Bradshaw, initially skeptical of Holmes's unconventional methods, became one of his most ardent supporters within Scotland Yard. The success of the Blackwood case demonstrated the value of scientific detection methods and systematic evidence gathering, leading to improvements in police investigative techniques. Holmes showed us that even the most sophisticated criminal can be defeated by patient observation and logical analysis. Bradshaw reflected, "The smallest clue, properly understood, can expose the largest conspiracy." The tunnel network Blackwood had used for his elimination operations was sealed and converted into secure storage for evidence in ongoing criminal investigations. The passages that had facilitated murder were transformed into instruments of justice, housing the documentation needed to prosecute the remaining members of the financial conspiracy. Holmes retained the small metal mechanism that had served as Blackwood's signature, displaying it in his study at Baker Street as a reminder of the case. The device that had once announced death now served as a symbol of justice, achieved through careful observation and scientific method. This mechanism represents both the potential for evil in human ingenuity and the power of truth to overcome even the most sophisticated deception. Holmes explained to visitors who inquired about the curious device, "It reminds me that technology is merely a tool. Its moral value depends entirely on the character of those who wield it." The case also established Holmes's reputation for solving seemingly impossible crimes through acoustic analysis and technical investigation. The methods he developed for analyzing sound evidence were adopted by investigators throughout Europe, leading to the solution of numerous cold cases involving unusual audio clues. Watson's detailed documentation of the investigation became a landmark study in criminal psychology and detective methodology. His account of how Holmes transformed a single metallic sound into comprehensive evidence of a vast conspiracy was studied by criminologists and law enforcement officials for decades. The broader impact of the case extended beyond criminal justice to financial reform. The evidence of systematic corruption led to new regulations for banking oversight, requirements for transparent financial reporting, and protections for employees who reported irregularities. These reforms prevented countless future crimes and protected honest financial professionals from retaliation. Most significantly, the case demonstrated that even the most carefully planned and technically sophisticated criminal enterprise could be defeated by patient investigation and unwavering commitment to justice. Blackwood's elimination network, which had operated successfully for decades, was ultimately undone by the very precision that had made it seem invincible. Holmes reflected on the case's deeper meaning during quiet evenings at Baker Street, often while examining the metallic device that had played such a crucial role in the investigation. "How many crucial sounds do we dismiss as ordinary noise?" he would muse, missing the extraordinary truths they might contain. The metallic ping that initially seemed like mere coincidence had proved to be a murderer's signature, a victim's clue, and ultimately, the sound of justice being served. In a world filled with noise and distraction, Holmes had demonstrated the vital importance of truly listening, not just hearing, but understanding what sounds reveal about the hidden truths they contain. In your own life, what sounds might you be dismissing as ordinary noise when they could actually be revealing extraordinary truths about the world around you? Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through one of Sherlock Holmes's most complex cases. If you enjoyed discovering how a single sound unraveled an entire criminal conspiracy, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations into the brilliant mind of the world's greatest detective. Leave a comment below telling us which aspect of Holmes's deduction impressed you most. Was it his acoustic analysis, his understanding of criminal psychology, or his ability to turn the killer's own methods against him? And don't forget to check out our next video where we'll explore another impossible mystery that only Sherlock Holmes could solve.